Till Death Do Us Part is episode 2 of the 10-part conclusion of the series. Last time, Ezri and Worf were captured by the Breen, and Sisko had been told by the prophets not to get married to Cassidy Yates. Also, Dukat had himself surgically altered to look like a Bajoran in the hopes that perhaps the surgeon could give him some silicone implants for his character arc, since there had been some noticeable sagging there. This episode picks up with Jake talking with his father about the prophet's message, and Jake is having a hard time accepting it.
And when she gets back, what are you going to tell her? That some prophet who said that she's your mother, Sarah, told you not to marry her?
Jake, you're not making me feel any better.
Captain Sisko, Kai Wynn is here to see you.
Never rains but it pours. If I'm not out in 5 minutes, send in the hostage rescue team. Kai Wynn is here because of the wedding. Despite the fact that Sisko and Cassidy wanted a small wedding, all of Bajoran wants to be involved, and that includes her. And she is not even a little soft in her touch. She presumes that she should be performing the ceremony with such certainty that there is no other choice, and she's practically elbowing the Vedic out of the way. But Sisko was distracted.
The prophets came to me in a vision.
I see.
They warned me that I was going to have to face a great trial.
At a guess, I think it's this conversation. On her way out, Wynn, who confesses that she has never received a vision from the prophets, now suddenly has one, so she's quite giddy about that. They tell her that Sisko has faltered, so she'll need to make it right, thanks to the help of a guide who will come to her. She'll know him by his knowledge of the land, so we'll follow that under things that will make sense in context. That's something you often have to do with prophecies and visions. Right up there with don't cause the very thing you're worried about, and try not to accidentally have sex with a relative. After the titles, we pick up with Warf and Ezri, who are still prisoners of the Breen, despite his best efforts to escape.
Algae paste.
And we don't even need to glue any algae right now. The involvement of the Breen in the story is certainly a surprise. They're a much mentioned but seldom seen species. Worf says a Klingon invasion fleet once tried to capture their homeworld and was never heard from again. Although maybe they succeeded and it was so nice they just decided to stay there. You never know. As they discuss the situation, the subject turns again to Jadzia, although this time more positive now that they've got the boning out of the way. The title, of course, refers to the fact that Sisko and Cassidy's wedding is being considered, but its secondary meaning is related to the complicated relationship with Warf and Ezri because of their joint history through Jadzia. The relationship should have ended with her death, and yet it's lingering on. Meanwhile, Weyoun has to drag Damar out of bed to come to work.
I worked late last night.
Yes, I can see that.
This dress you made is lovely. You're the second best Cardassian tailor I've ever seen. He brings up the fact that Damar has been meeting with Dukat, but Weyoun doesn't care. Dukat has ceased being a factor in Dominion affairs as far as he's concerned. But in private, Dukat notes how can I put this? Fucking awful Damar looks right now. His out-of-control alcoholism and contempt for this continued war is clearly breaking him. He's so desperate, he even asks Dukat to come back and be Cardassia's leader instead. The man who got them into this mess. As if you needed any more sign that he's drunk, huh? You could be leader, and I could open my own bakery and bait shop. Bait and bake. Oh, damn it. I was so close to the first payment. What happened to my life? Meanwhile, Cassidy has returned finally, and Sisko eventually fesses up to what the prophets told him. There is no easy way to give that news. The gods themselves say I shouldn't marry you is a real kick to the old self-esteem. Sisko tries to be logical about it, that the prophets can see things that he can't, and if they felt it was important enough to tell him, then it probably is. And while it's not brought up, this is not the first time that a warning has come through telling him not to do something that he thinks he should. By ignoring their advice, the wormhole was sealed and Jadzia was killed. And Sisko went away for a long time trying to deal with everything that happened. That experience has got to be weighing heavily on him. He wants this more than anything. But with bitter experience, he's fearful of just what will happen if he ignores a warning again. So he tells Cassidy that he's made up his mind. The wedding is off. Also, they already had the bachelor party, and since he spent all the money on the land, well, they had to use her account for that. I hope that's not going to be a problem, is it, honey? Back in the cell, Worf awakens Ezri from a bad dream where she was being chased by the Breen and then captured. So waking up in a Breen detention cell probably isn't very comforting. Worf tells her to forget about it, but she insists that dreams are a window into your soul, and all that crap. So she recounts the whole thing, and everybody loves to hear about other people's dreams, right? Let's buckle in and hear this.
And took off his helmet.
And?
And it was Julian.
Completely normal phenomenon.
Isn't that strange? I wonder what it meant.
Dr. Bashir is a Breen.
That's stupid. I crown that the stupidest thing anyone has ever said.
The cave could symbolize the womb. Maybe my subconscious is trying to tell me that I need to confront emotions that I've repressed since birth.
And suddenly, the throne's been stolen. The Breen interrupt this ridiculousness to shock Worf with something and then drag him away from Ezri. So at least they've done him a favor there. Over on the station, Dukat visits Kai Wynn under the alias of Anjo, claiming to be a farmer. In other words, someone who knows the land. He describes how to treat the blight on his crops from last year, which matches the metaphor used in Wynn's vision, so she knows that he is the guide that she was promised, proving that some people really do get what they deserve. Meanwhile, Sisko is a bit on the ornery side, naturally, so he finally confesses to Kira what has been going on with him and Cassidy. And while she sympathizes, you might remember that she had broken up with Shakar because the prophets said that they weren't meant to be together. She says they probably know what they're talking about. That thinking leads to a bit of confusing stuff when we get to Anjo and Wynn again, and he's grousing about how he thinks it was wrong of the prophets to choose Sisko as their emissary.
It's not for me to question why the prophets chose him as their emissary.
You forget the prophets chose you as my guide. You must speak your mind freely, Anjo.
So Anjo, chosen by the prophets, should speak about his thoughts that the prophets were wrong to make Sisko the chosen of the prophets, because Anjo was chosen by the prophets. So what he has to say must be what the prophets want to be said about the prophets being wrong. Either this is really screwed up, or the prophets have found an awkward way of showing that they've changed their minds. Everything he says further reinforces the idea in Wynn's mind that he was chosen. He echoes her true feelings about Sisko. His story of how he survived the occupation shows a hidden connection with Wynn. She hasn't been this giddy since she saw Vedic Baral slip down a flight of stairs. Elsewhere, Sisko is feeling miserable, so his day is not exactly helped by the arrival of Quark. There is a non-refundable expense, the ring, although Quark has the sense to say something besides financial matters.
Seems a shame to let something so beautiful go to waste.
And if you're wondering, Captain, yes, I'm still single. Over on the Breen ship, the bad guys have been probing their minds. First Worf, who babbles about dishonor, try not to be too surprised, and then Ezri, who is all over the place until she settles on wanting a kiss from Bashir, right when she makes Worf think that she has the hots for him. So it looks like the one positive thing about being stuck in here with Ezri is now gone. You could just see it on Worf's face. This is a man who just realized he's stuck in an inescapable box with his ex-wife. I think he's going to try to headbutt his way through that door in a moment. Anjo visits Kai Wynn in the middle of the night. There's certainly something Dukat has done many times on this station with Bajoran ladies. To tell her that his fictional brother said that their crop, which they just planted last week, has already started sprouting, and that should be impossible. Well, not unless you factor in the enormous amounts of bullshit that Dukat's constantly flinging around. That might have done it. Wynn says that this is a sign. He is to remain by her side, that clearly the prophets brought them together here, and then starts to make out with him. Hopefully the power race are giving him hazard pay for this one. Elsewhere, Sisko has taken what Quark said to heart, which is the first time I think I've ever said that. He's going to have to go see Cassidy Yates about this. Hopefully, though, he knows just what needs to be said in this situation. Let's see.
I made a mistake.
You can tell Sisko's experience with marriage. He knows that there's only one thing she wants to hear right now. So it's going to be a real rush of a wedding. All his friends are there, although Kira is a real gloomy Gus since he's going against the wishes of the prophets. Jake has come prepared, though. He's dressed in the traditional wedding apparel of Earth in this century. It's a bathrobe fused with the coat of a used car salesman. Well, it's time for the big moment.
With this ring,
This is not meant to be, Benjamin.
Hey, hey, hey! You wait until the speak now or forever hold your peace part. This right here is rude. She's still trying to talk him out of this. Well, bark instructions at him on what he's supposed to do would probably be more accurate. But he does his best to explain how important this is to him. Gradually she comes around and lets him go through with it, although worried for the consequences of all of this, given everything that's happening. I mean, knowing that Dukat and Wynn are getting it on somewhere else on this station certainly makes the thought of eating wedding cake uncomfortable. So, with Sisko's part of the title out of the way, we can now get over to the Worf Dax part. The fact that those two parted when Jadzia died. Now, it's Worf's turn to be the jerk as he gets accusatory over Ezri's confession about Bashir, but is thankfully interrupted by the arrival of the Breen. And it coincides with the secret mission the Founder is on with Weyoun and Damar. The two ships rendezvous, and turns out they're turning over these prisoners to their new friends because the two sides are becoming allies. Dun dun dun! Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to the Wynn Dukat makeout. Everyone needs love, but I really don't want to see this match made in hell being consummated. And yes, that probably means the title has a threefold meaning. I just don't want to think about that. Final score for Till Death Do Us Part is 5 out of 10. It's still a very low-key episode, but it's a bit stronger of a character piece than the last one. It's helped by the much smaller role that Ezri and Worf have, which clearly is not doing this story any favors. Frankly, I think this issue was resolved near the start of the season, and this rehashing of it was unnecessary and is overall a disservice to the final arc. The Sisko Cassidy plot works much better, although it will be somewhat undermined by a last-minute change in the story, but we'll get into that later. As for Dukat and Wynn, we'll talk about them more in our next episode, Strange Bedfellows. Oh, I can imagine what that will entail.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord! Damar. Damar.